we'll handle it. So I'm Justin Baffin. I'm a assistant professor at the University of Kentucky. I'm the associate director for technology of the P20 Innovation Lab. A little bit about my background. I'm a teacher. I grew up across the river from Paducah, taught, and then went to law school, so I'll apologize in advance. Anyway, because I still have that in me a bit, I structure my presentations as arguments a little bit, so I want to make a bit of an argument today. And then I'm joined by Dean Mary John O'Hare here, who will pick up later on when we start talking about our plans. And she's now in her second year with us at UK, and is responsible for the development of this P20 Innovation Lab. So anyway, to get rolling, today I want to talk about a few things that I want us to just start calling a given. Things that we've been debating for the last decade or so that I'm tired of debating. We can have that debate, and I'm willing to work with you and give resources and whatnot. But for purposes of our innovation lab, we're going to start assuming some things. All right, so I want to articulate the things we're assuming, and then I want to go into a couple of concerns that I have off of all of these assumptions, and then I want to move into let Dean O'Hare take over a bit on what we're calling our new plan. Okay, so some givens. Given number one, it's a global world. All right, and to just give you some sense, let's take a look at the skylines of a few cities. This is Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Shanghai in China, Kuala Lumpur, Sao Paulo, Johannesburg, and Seoul, South Korea. Actually, we have a couple of our department mates, a couple of the folks that teach leadership at UK are currently in Johannesburg for an international conference on educational leadership. Anyway, so you're like, yeah, I've heard of those cities, right? I know that these are global financial hubs, that they're attracting money and investments from all over the world. But let's look at a few more maybe you don't know about. Panama City, Panama, Chongqing in China, Lagos in Nigeria, Auckland in New Zealand, Manila in the Philippines, and Mexico City, which leads to the question of, what's happening to the third world? I mean, just jumping back quickly, how many of you, when you think Mexico City, think glass skyscrapers like that, right? That's not what we think of, but that is what's happening. This is what the world is transitioning to. And what's happening with all this going on is that we're developing a world middle class. So these are World Bank income groupings from 2006. And so only the red on this map are what we consider poor countries nowadays. All of the green and the purple on this map, these are middle income countries nowadays. I mean, these are not the third world that we have in our minds that we grew up learning or we may have read about in textbooks. This is a different world. And to really illustrate how crazy it's getting out there, this was in the paper just a couple days ago. Bangladesh is now stealing jobs from China, right? So China is losing manufacturing jobs to other developing countries. We're so worried about losing jobs to China or Mexico. In reality, they're now losing all of those manufacturing jobs to countries where the labor is even cheaper, right? So Doha in Bangladesh, or Dhaka in Bangladesh, which is becoming a new global economic center. So all of that combined leads to this statistic, of course. Manufacturing jobs have been falling off the map for decades now, and as this recession is hit, you can see the real new angle that the line is taking. Here in Kentucky, we're facing the same elements. You can see that the Kentucky Workforce Development Group thinks we'll be losing manufacturing and agricultural and logging jobs. We'll be gaining education and healthcare and hospitality jobs. So all of those together, I want us to assume this, take this as a given. Number one, globalization is real. And number two, our assembly line manufacturing jobs, they're not coming back. Right, that's my first one. The second one, is technology is changing information. All right, so this, we all have some sense of this is turning into this, right? We all have your iPads now, thinking about getting one. It's fine. Anyway, you know, computing is quickly taking over a lot of the daily processes that we have. Having an iPad now, in meetings, I take notes with the iPad. I don't really use pen and paper anymore to take notes. So this transition is happening pretty rapidly. But to look at it in a bit more detail, what's happened is information is becoming detached from physical space. Of course, what happens when information detaches from physical space? We have some examples. Right, so this is a map. This is what maps used to look like. We remember this time when maps were physical things. In order to re-access the information on that map, you needed to have that piece of paper with you. So you had to carry that paper with you and or put it in a place where you could find it again, like a library. Right, so we don't really do maps like that anymore. Nowadays maps look like this or something equivalent to it, maybe like your little GPS in your car. Right, maps look different. That data is stored in new places. And of course, this kind of concept is happening across all kinds of sectors. So encyclopedias don't look like that anymore. We remember this. I remember world books, but anyone bought a set of world books like that? Right, we don't do that anymore. Now encyclopedias look like that. Film. Right? We don't really use film much anymore. We now have cameras that look something like this. You know, records, these 45s, we remember this time. We there. This is how we access music. But we, of course, don't do that anymore. Nowadays, it's all iPods. And actually, I'm not really giving you an accurate portrayal here. You know, it's more accurate to say that this has actually become this. And each one of those being a little record, a little 45. That's how much data, well actually about double that number. If I made it much smaller, you wouldn't be able to recognize it. So about double the number of records on there is about equivalent to 164 gig iPod, like this one. The most profound and simplest and most beautiful transition that's happened in my mind is this. We've taken all of the world's information, or at least a vast amount of it, that we used to have to access through systems like this, like card catalogs. You remember card catalogs? We learned how to use these things in the Dewey Decimal System. We've taken all of that. This is how we found and stored and re-accessed and kept all the world's information, and we turned that into this, a single search box. Right, so this is not a change in degree with information. This is an underlying huge technological paradigm shift that's occurring. So I want to have this as our second given that we're going to take with us moving forward. Information will never be the same, and information enterprises will have to change or become obsolete. That's the end of my second one. The third one I want to talk about quickly is the web is a useful thing. Around 1995, the web was an incredibly boring place. It was just scientists talking to other scientists. And as a researcher, I think that would be quite interesting, but it turns out that most of the world doesn't. Most of the world want to be entertained. So what does entertainment on the web look like? Well, it looks something like this. You all know this. I think has Cheeseburger and our LOL cats for these things, or maybe one of these other various things that have occurred that in retrospect seem really, really stupid, but at the time they were entertaining, right? And when you have entertaining things, a whole bunch of people will show up. And it turned out that when all those people showed up, they found useful stuff to do too. And so what is some of this useful stuff? Right? So here's some. Right? These are all useful things that we do on the web. And as the web began to be useful in our everyday lives, a whole lot more people started showing up. So around 2000, the web had about 350 million users, which represented about that proportion of the world human population. Alright, so that was a decade ago, and within this last decade, we've pretty dramatically increased to about 1.8 billion internet users in 10 years, which represents about that much of the world human population. You can see at the end there, human population is getting larger pretty quickly. So, and one of the major drivers of this growth in internet usage are some pretty basic things now we take for granted. And one of those is Facebook. So Facebook itself, sorry the blue doesn't show up wonderfully, is responsible for about 500 million users right now, right? Which would make it the third largest country on earth if it were a country. So that's some of the growth of the internet. I mean, we can only expect this to get faster in the future. And just as an idea of what Facebook 500 million means, it's hard to picture that. So picture every man, woman, and child in Kentucky, and then multiply it by about 100, and that's about where we're at with Facebook at the moment. The really, really wild thing is that Facebook is 6 years old. Within 6 years, we've done this. This is something new, something different. So the web became ordinary, and becoming ordinary became useful, and becoming useful, it became indispensable. So let's all collectively take as a given that the internet is now part of our life, and that the internet can be useful for most daily activities. Hopefully we can take this as a given. Alright, the fourth given I want to point out is that these changes are happening fast. Right, these are a list of inventions that occurred just within about the last century. A couple of now were in 2008, or a century and 10 years. First radio transmission across the Atlantic, right? 1901, we couldn't even talk to each other around the globe. But 1901, we sent a wire across the Atlantic, we sent an electric signal down it, we were talking. 03, we did an airplane. In 08, we did a Model T. In 1910, we did a motion picture. 1927, television. 1932, modern photography. 1937, we did photocopies. 1941, we came up with software-controlled computers. Probably didn't know they were that old, but they are. 1945, then of course we did the phone. 1955, fiber optics. 1958, lasers. 1959, microchip. 67, calculators. 68, RAM. 72, word processing. 78, spreadsheets. 79, cell phones. 1981, we did personal computers. In 1990, we created this thing called the World Wide Web, and that's when we really started to get exciting, right? Up to that point, we were just every 4 or 5 years we do something big. Now it's every single year. Anyway, the point is that all of these things are happening pretty rapidly, and the takeaway there should be that this is happening exponentially. So this is Ray Kurzweil who speaks on the growth of technology. Right, so we have some evidence that this is actually true. If we look at the growth in the basic processing of transistors, it's doubling about every 2 years. This is what we call Moore's Law. You might have heard of it. But since for about 40 years now, the basic processing of a basic transistor in each one of our little computers has been doubled. So you can see that the y-axis there is exponential. This is a law of graph. Anyway, so yeah, things are happening pretty quickly, so let's take as given number 4 that the pace of innovation will only accelerate further. And now, my last point. I think this one's super important. To remember and see that education is trying. I think a lot of speakers on this subject try to paint education as being resistant to this or just ignoring this whole thing. I feel like that's totally inaccurate, and I really do not want that being the portrayal that the P20 Lab is putting out there. So education is trying, and as evidence, this is an image that we start to see more and more frequently in our schools all the time. So you've probably seen this in some of the districts. And just as for some statistics, using our technology statistics here in Kentucky, we have over 200,000 instructional devices, a fifth of which are now mobile, laptops or tablets. 70% of schools have tech skills in their curriculum. 92% of schools are connected by fiber in this state, which is amazing. What an enormously good job Kentucky has done getting fiber to our schools. 75% of our classrooms have projectors, flat screens, or smart boards, so have some technological capability in at least 3 out of the 4 of our classrooms. And of course, here in Kentucky, we've been trying other things too. I mean, we adopted this new Common Core initiative, which tries to speak to some of these issues. We've developed national standards on student technology. We have student technology programs like STLP. We have technology associations like KISTI. We even tried, for better or worse, the Kentucky Virtual School. In our schools, we see these kinds of things every day. Skype and Moodle, and the big new Live EDU rollout we just went through, right? Putting all of Kentucky's data in the cloud. How amazing is that, right? So we're doing some great things. Encyclomedia just met with KET officials yesterday and was talking to Encyclomedia in the transition that KET's doing with Encyclomedia to start storing some of their own content. Google Docs, TeacherTube, WordPress, VoiceThread, yeah. Right? These are tools that are now part of our normal everyday arsenal. And in higher ed, we're trying too. I mean, this is the P20 lab. We don't want to talk just K-12. So higher ed's a little bit more subject to the market. So we've been a bit more responsive in our online programs. So this is some data that came out recently. And you can see by 2008, we had over 25% of our courses in higher education were online. And if we just follow that trend line, we're probably to about a third of our courses in higher education right now are online. Now, not all the same, obviously. Phoenix doesn't all online, and some don't do any online, and a lot of us are here in the middle of Kentucky, where we do some online and some. So, given number 5, schools are not standing still in the face of these rapid changes, and let's also take as a given that educators are caring people working hard to improve learning for kids, right? People in the field of education, we know that these are good people that are not simply ignoring all these changes in society. All right, then as a quick summary, globalization is real, and economics will drive jobs overseas to the cheapest, stable labor pools. Information will never be the same, and organizations must adapt. The internet's part of our life and is generally useful. The pace of innovation will only accelerate further, and schools staffed with good people are not standing still in the fast pace of these rapid changes. Those are my givens. Now let me talk about quickly a couple of concerns. My first concern is that our classrooms look like that. This is a somewhat accurate portrayal. The classroom looks something like this, right? I'm too far off base, so no. It's been about 5 years since I've taught in a classroom like this. Right, this classroom concerns me because we've structured this classroom for a different economy. There's a reason that those desks are in rows, and that they're all facing front, and that we feel very orderly, because we had an economy that was based on rows and orders and assembly lines and everything else. Right? We built our school, the entire system we built, beginning in the 1900s and over the first half of that century, for an agricultural and working economy. But that's not the economy we have anymore. We have a service and creative class economy that our schools built for manufacturing are not serving as well as they could. You can get lots of people to say it. This is one guy. Okay, so what we don't really need at the moment is a change in degree. We really need a paradigm shift in education. And of course, my concern is how we're going to do it. So my second concern then gets to an infrastructure for ideas and our idea infrastructure in education. So right now, it looks something like this. Sorry, this is not the greatest diagram. This is a hard one to draw. But let's just assume we have ideas moving back and forth between schools and districts and organizations and universities and co-ops and KDE all the time. Right? But these things are accidental. When ideas move back and forth, these are somewhat accidental if an idea goes from a school to a district to KDE. that's good and that's working for us some, but we have no real set system for how that should work. There's no process that determines what happens when a school, there's an idea that pops up in a school that's fantastic, the teacher is amazing. What is our process for turning that fantastic idea into a scalable and sustainable innovation we can spread throughout the state? My concern is that we don't really have a good process for that. And of course it's getting more and more complicated as we're all dealing with shrinking budgets lately. So where is this idea hub that we could really use, and who is responsible for driving this innovation? Really, I mean, shouldn't we have something like an educational skunk works? Wouldn't that make sense? We're an enormous enterprise, much larger than Lockheed Martin. And yet Lockheed Martin has an entire budget just for developing entirely new projects. So particularly I'm concerned about where do our principals go for, or where do they test out new ideas? Because if our leaders don't get this, it's not going to happen. And our leaders, they're responsible for a lot. Budgets and personnel and assignments and facilities and time and discipline, curriculum, and on we go. And in the end, what they control is really change. But our leaders are restricted. Restricted. Our leaders are restricted by federal mandates and state laws and school boards and SPDMs and curricular assignments and testing. And these things are not good, they're not particularly bad, I don't really care, but what they add up to in the end is that you are busy with the everyday work of school. So that's the end of my concerns. Now I want to move us forward into a plan that we're trying to develop at UK, and this is something new, that hopefully can help us on this front a little bit. So I'll turn it over to Dean O'Hare to talk then about what our plan is.
Hello. And really would like this to be interactive, so if you have any questions or ideas, just chime right in. We'll talk a little bit about our Kentucky P20 Innovation Lab, and the idea is really that it is about innovation and ways that we can learn, innovate together. Okay. So we'll start out, first of all, in terms of our institution. Why is the University of Kentucky interested? Why is this so important to us? Why do we want to be close partners with you? We see this as P20 preschool. We actually see it beginning at birth through graduate education into careers. We've always heard cradle to careers work. This is what we want to do, and we want to be very closely connected. As you think about University of Kentucky, I've only been there 1 year. I moved from the University of Oklahoma. What I found very unique, I was also at Tech University, at Mexico State. I've been at other institutions. But what I've noticed about UK and about Kentucky in general is it's wonderful to have all of these disciplines, these colleges housed together. We can work together so closely. That was not the case with the other institutions. All 17 colleges want to be involved in our P20 Innovation Lab. And we want to look at innovation from multiple disciplines working together to solve real issues and problems. What do we have to offer? Thinking about UK, looking at our student body. We know our students today really want to be involved in making a difference. They want to not only pursue their studies, but they see their studies must be connected, and they must be involved in communities and schools. So we want them to look at, most of them, they've not already learned that, to learn to be involved in working in local schools when they come to UK. You can take a look at the budget, grants and contracts, and our fundraising efforts, and we attract the best, brightest minds around the country at a research university. We're also in partnership with U of L, with Western, Eastern, our comprehensive regionals, and our private universities as well. They're a part of the P20 Innovation Lab, and all of us working together collectively in our state. We did a little survey to take a look at what's going on at UK involving K-12 education, funded research projects, but projects that could make a difference in schools. And we came up with a lot of people through those 17 colleges are doing a lot of very innovative work. But guess what? We're not necessarily communicating with ourselves across those 17 colleges. And yet also what I noticed is a third of those focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math type innovation. And this is only focused towards K-12 education. So there's a lot going on throughout our entire university that we're not necessarily connecting and working. So part of P20 is to make that connection across those colleges in a way that makes a difference for our schools here. And President Todd is leading this effort, and he has been for quite a while. But he is our leader in our P20 Innovation Lab. And the idea, as you can see, is really take those cutting-edge innovations that are occurring and move it beyond just doing the research. The research is critical. As we heard Tony Wagner this morning say, we don't have enough time for research and development. These folks here have up to 40% and over amount of time for that research, development, and innovation. But what's been lacking is how does that directly relate and connect and benefit our students in P12. That's the part that we want this lab to be about, the P20 Innovation Lab. That's a little bit about our institution. Thinking now about what is the model. What are we looking at and how will this work? I used, in my previous position, I was for 15 years at the University of Oklahoma as Vice Provost for School and Community Partnerships. And we worked very closely in the K-20 Center, working with all of our school districts and focusing on innovative technologies and professional learning communities and how those two really go together. The model, we worked across Oklahoma. It's a little bit like Kentucky. We did a lot of driving and traveling and working with over 520 school districts. So you can see we have a lot of very small rural districts, in addition to Tulsa and Oklahoma City. What we found was a strong student impact in connecting our university and our partner universities in the state of Oklahoma and driving that innovation and helping schools to support schools in terms of student impact, as well as we found that the barometer that we measured academic progress, our public looked at was the academic performance indicator, and our work had a 74% increase in the state academic performance index, higher than the average school increase. So helping, it wasn't so much students as it was adults, learn and use technology in very innovative ways that truly made a difference for students was key. But it was also developing a learning, professional learning community that was P20, that involved the university and schools in collaboration and feeding innovation with each other. That was a little bit about the model. There's been a great deal written. You can take a look at K20 Center at the University of Oklahoma if you'd like additional information. Our concept here is really taking a little bit of that idea, but moving it broadly across our 17 colleges, our regional universities, but to do that in collaboration with our schools. And our ultimate focus is student success. How can we help support our students? We decided in terms of our P20 lab structure, it's about issues Kentucky faces in education. And we are doing this through issue-based labs. Each one of these issue-based labs will be led by a faculty member and by an educator that's in P12. And they are co-directed. For example, Justin's going to describe the Technology Leadership Lab, and it's co-directed by the superintendent of Danville, Harmon Coleman. And he'll tell you a little bit about that one. Each one targets an issue with safety. For example, health and wellness. college and career readiness lab. As you heard the speech earlier today by Tony Wagner, when he was talking about the early colleges and a lot of that work, that will be coming out of the college and career readiness lab. Motivation and learning, looking at our high schools, but looking across the board at how we can help encourage our students and continue that motivation, desire to learn. Assessment and Accountability Lab, which is going to be led by Tom Gusky and others in the field. One of the products is standards-based report cards. A lot of the work coming out of these labs will be products and ways to really help you. Digital game-based learning. While I was in Oklahoma, we worked very closely in developing game-based learning for our students based on the standards. And we're involved in doing that here as well in partnership with our College of Engineering. And kind of some of the others, global issues and world languages is a lab as well. STEM education, a big focus for us. President Todd has been involved in STEM education for quite a while. Ultimately, our lab mission is the following. We want it to focus on the most critical issues, not what we think are the issues, not what we want in terms of research, but what our public and what our partners really want us to focus on. It's not as much in terms of it's not only doing the research, but it's truly transforming research into innovation and working on how you implement it day to day. It's about the how, it's about the daily work. We introduced a concept that was launched spring of 2000. Well, actually, it would have been.
Yeah, spring 2010.
2010.
Sorry. It's only been 1 year.
We presented in December, I remember, but then we actually hosted and launched in February this past year. It's a collaboration that is so unique in Kentucky. We didn't have anything like this in Oklahoma or elsewhere, where we had KDE working closely with us, with our president, with our CPE, Council of Post-Secondary Education, and our Professional Standards Board. That's very remarkable, and I think it's due to Kentucky's collaboration climate over the last 20 years. It's quite unique. Our issue-based labs, as you can see those are described for you here, they'll be launched and they're all working now, developing and inviting. They want to invite partners to come in and work with them. There will be a meeting September 7th and 8th that will be devoted. All the superintendents will be invited to that meeting. It will be hosted by KDE, by UK. It will be close to our campus, and CCSSO, Gene Belfort, many of you know Gene, will be leading the effort of innovation. All of these labs will have time for them to present, and we hope that you'll be able to find where you would like to work or be a part of. We really see it about refocusing, as I mentioned, our research, our scholarship to the how part of it, and to the innovation. We want to help seek funding. We are good, generally, at universities in terms of going after sponsored research and sponsored innovation type projects and funding. We'd like to do that in partnership with you. We see these labs as generating real products, something very useful for you, and in districts and in higher ed. We'll sponsor conferences. I mentioned the one in September that's coming up. Also, there will be one in December, an innovation summit, which we would love to have our schools and higher ed partners there as well. And it's about partnership and refocusing teacher preparation, administrator preparation, and the ways that we have functioned in the past. As Justin mentioned, it's a new day. It's a new time. New times demand new scholarship, and that's really what this one is about. Our partners, and we have many more. Take a look at some of the initial partners that helped to launch this effort. and I think the concept that what we had mentioned, and then I want you to know it's part of a larger national network. And CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers, the Stutsky Foundation has launched a national effort called the Next Generation Learning. Next Generation Learning involved, we had, before the 6 states were identified, all 50 states had an opportunity to apply, and they were looking for states that were ready to transform education, not just incrementally change here and there, but totally transform the way we approach education. Based on what we've heard, what Justin presented, there were 26 states that applied. There were 6 states that were selected, and we're one of those 6. And we just returned from a conference last May, and I would say Kentucky is actually leading those 6 states. We have that collaboration already ingrained in our way of thinking. That was not the case in these other states, but we're looking forward to working with them. Each one will have innovation labs, like our P20 Innovation Lab. We're about a year ahead because we did start this earlier. And ours involves a real P20, P12 schools, higher education, and on into university. The idea is to be able to scale innovation that's occurring in Danville. For example, I won't present too much because I know you'll describe it in a moment, but looking at individual districts, individual schools, be able to scale innovation not only for Kentucky, but we have the national network that will be able to then host innovation and look at it nationally, eventually. Just want to throw in real quick about the attributes for next generation learning. Very much what you've heard this morning and what we all know, that personalized learning, students expect personalized learning, world-class knowledge and skills. That's what our goal is. How we're going to get there is very much authentic student voice, performance-based learning, mastery learning. What will it take? We know it takes comprehensive systems of support, which we've described that we do have here at the anytime, everywhere learning opportunities. Yeah, I'd like to give an example, and we'll talk about one of the labs, and I'll ask Justin to come back and describe the Technology Leadership Lab.
Okay, so just briefly to give an example of how this will work. In addition to a lot of my other responsibilities at the moment, I'm the co-director of the Technology Leadership Lab with Carmen Coleman, the superintendent of Danville. There are a couple of Danville folks with us here today talking about it, working it over. So we're actually doing a bunch of projects. Here's a bit of the core team. And so even though we're co-directors, we still have a core team that has other professors on it. We just hired a brand new professor. I mean, this is a priority for us. So it's shifted our hiring. We're hiring people that can speak to these issues. Jason Richardson, who's coming in, I think on Tuesday. Pretty excited about that. Marty Park at KDE is working very closely with us here. And then we're part of a larger entity that we're teaming up with Iowa State University to work on leadership issues nationally. So some stuff that we're working on in the very near term is technology leader training. We're collectively with KET, Kentucky Educational Television, and KDE launching an iTunes U network. We have a show that we're putting on ourselves, and we're trying to build at this point a networking platform where all of us can get together and share ideas. The leader training, we have a phased concept. I think a lot of our technology efforts in the past have focused very intensely on teachers and schools. But what we've seen is those have not scaled very well. It's scaled in that classroom and maybe a couple classrooms around that. So while that's fantastic and we want to continue that, what we want to work on directly is working with leaders, because leaders are the key to the scalability of any of these projects. And then we have a whole school learning and teachers and students after that, but all that comes after our phase 1, which is all about the leaders. Same old thing there. This is Arizona's e-learning platform. Right now, we're working on the graphics for ours, so within the next couple of weeks, I'll have the graphics to show what UK's iTunes U network will look like. UK's or Kentucky IGT network. You'll look at apologies. And that, of course, is stuff that goes to mobile devices. I mean, this is where kids are learning nowadays. They're learning on their iPods, whether they like it or don't like it. I don't really care. This is what's happening. Kids are all on their iPods a lot. So let's put some stuff they can learn up there. Another I want to throw in there, since we have our Danville folks here, I'm working closely with Carmen on a new concept in Danville. We're still calling it the Innovation Warehouse, right? We've not changed the name. Okay. Carmen and I came up with that in the airport in Austin, actually. In the airport in Austin, we are. What the hell do we call this thing? So we're hoping to get a warehouse, an old pimp warehouse. The students are like that. At Centre College is a partner of ours. And Centre College has a warehouse that's sitting empty at the moment. And so we're hoping in that space to build a innovation zone for both Danville and Boyle County schools, where teachers and students can come and try out a lot of new ideas, or they can feel somewhat liberated from the daily routines of school, where we're all sitting in these classrooms and it feels like we should be doing this, this, and this. Well, we want to take this to a new space and try things out, and things that work, we're going to bring back into Danville and Boyle County High School. And then the concept is within 5 years we'll shut the warehouse down, because we will have achieved in the high schools the kind of change that we were looking for. So we hope that this is a concept that then can be replicated, not just in Danville and Boyle County, but then across the state. We have a lot of empty Walmarts sitting around the state at the moment. We have a lot of empty strip malls. I was just in Versailles on the way here today. There's this huge empty strip mall in Versailles right there by McDonald's in the picture. Anyway, there's these spaces that are existing. Maybe we can use these spaces to sort of transition school space. So that's a project that we're working on. Another conference that we just agreed to with KASA is that beginning in June of next year, every year following, I think it's June 8th and 9th, if they want the extra form, we're going to have the Kentucky Education Law and Policy Conference, which is really going to focus just on legal issues and policy issues. I mean, Wayne gets such a good response. If you all have ever went to his early morning session on Thursdays, it's jam-packed with people. It was today, and went fantastic. So I went last year, and since I keep up with all these cases anyway, that's what I do. I'm a lawyer, remember, so I'm supposed to be doing the education law. So that's another example of what's already coming out of this effort. And like I said, we're about 6 months over it. So just then to wrap up and talking a bit about your role, you know, innovate, that's what we really are looking for. And when you're out there innovating in your districts, we really want to know what's working for you. And we want to team up and research those things. And when those ideas work well, we want to help you scale them, not just in your districts, but in the state. We want you to be teaming up with labs. We have the example here. There's the names of folks, the contact information on the back. Please give us a call, contact us, we'll team you up with the lab. We want you to get out there and start talking with your peers. I mean, we're going to have to do this together kind of thing. And, you know, this is just an effort of a few people. It's not going to work. It seems to be a broader effort. You know, bring your ideas to us. Bring your ideas to KDE. I mean, KDE had their new big shake-up the last couple of days. There's a new David Cook's in charge of innovation, director for innovation. Okay, fantastic. Now we have a point person. Send your ideas. So generally, I mean, for you folks out there in the districts, we want you to keep driving innovation up into your schools, and then we really want this new network to help us push innovation down at the same time. I mean, we need both directions. If we're really going to do something substantially different, we're going to need pushing on change in both ways. And then finally, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. Not a new concept. Julie said it quite a lot. So that's the contact information, which you have on the back of the handouts there. And that's it. So questions you don't have, Lisa?
See this conversation.
Well, we really would like to also have bigger space, such as the warehouse. We don't see it necessarily today. We see it out across the state.
And we are developing physical space at UK as well at the moment. Like Nathan, we've had some stops and starts to these tight budgets now.